Reddit moderators, specifically the ones on WallStreetBets, seem to not want anybody to openly discuss medical properties trust. I recently started a due diligence thread on Reddit just to see what would happen, what the audience there would think of my thesis on the stock. And within less than a second of posting it, it was essentially instantly deleted. And I find this very interesting. I read the rules to the subreddit and for the due diligence flair and posted this in good faith and believe that I was, in fact, within the bounds of all the rules. I didn't lean on a short squeeze thesis. I didn't bring up GameStop or AMC or anything like that, which those things are now frowned upon. The short interest was mentioned, although briefly, as a part of the story. And that's simply because I think the fact that it is so heavily shorted and sort of the narrative war between management of Medical Properties Trust and the short sellers is materially important to what will happen with this stock in the future. I decided to post this due diligence on my own subreddit that I control. It doesn't really have many members. It's just a place where I knew I could post it and it wouldn't be deleted. And I will link that below. Go ahead and become a member of that subreddit if you want. I'll maybe find a use for it in the future. Now back to the battle between Medical Properties Trust and the shorts. One of the major players in this battle is an entity called Viceroy Research, which Medical Properties Trust filed a lawsuit against in federal court last year. You guys said you wanted a video going on about that. And so this is part one of that video. Let's get into that just a moment. So the lawsuit starts off with a bit of a definitions page where they outline the fact that Medical Properties Trust may therein be referred to as MPT or simply the company. And they define who the defendant is, which is Viceroy Research, LLC, which they may simply refer to as Viceroy, and its members, Fraser John Paring, Gabriel Bernard, and Aiden Lau. I hope I'm pronouncing those right because those are some really great upstanding guys. Now, this action arises from a campaign to defame, injure, drive down the stock price of MPT, one of Alabama's largest companies and its largest real estate investment trust. That is the allegation that MPT is making against Viceroy. They allege that those gentlemen are in the business of mounting serial short and distort attacks against public companies, and that MPT is the latest victim in such attacks. The playbook for the attacks, as described by management, is simple. They take a short position in the stock, or they partner with someone who has a short position. They publish false, and they quote, research critical of the target company. They then proceed to amplify those claims on social media and then reap a profit, either directly from the stock price drop or indirectly by collecting payments from other players who profited on the drop. So basically, they say, hey, we've got this negative research on this company. We'll blast it out for you, who's doing the short position, but you have to give us a kickback on it. That's what MPT is saying Viceroy does in this lawsuit. Now, this next part's pretty wild. Paring, a self-proclaimed grand poobah of short sellers, entered the distortion game after British regulators revoked his social work license upon finding out that he had lied and fabricated evidence. Now, remember, Paring is one of the partners in Viceroy Research, the ones that are publishing a lot of the negative stuff about Medical Properties Trust. Paring founded Viceroy with Bernard and Lau in 2016, and the firm became notorious for short and distort schemes. In 2021, for example, a South African regulator fined Viceroy millions of dollars for spreading false and misleading claims about a South African bank on behalf of a hedge fund that was trying to drive down the bank's stock price. Sound familiar? And from MPT's perspective, they escaped justice on that one because a tribunal vacated the penalty for a jurisdictional defect. Basically, the court or whatever that was hearing the case for that apparently felt that it didn't have jurisdiction, or some higher court found that they didn't have jurisdiction. So I guess the fine didn't stick, maybe. MPT goes on to say that short selling is not illegal in the United States, obviously, and criticism of public companies is integral to our capital markets. I agree. Nor is it illegal to couple that short selling with criticism, provided the speaker does not deliberately or recklessly misrepresent facts for profit. This is absolutely a defamation case, so that's the important part. But they say Viceroy does not play by the rules. And according to the complaint here, for months the firm, its members, and their cohorts spread malicious falsehoods about MPT. Now, this is where we start to get into what the big deal is here. So in late January 2023, Viceroy announced that it held a short position in MPT and simultaneously published the first of 14 reports on the company. As an aside, I kind of imagine the Medical Properties Trust legal team doing the air quotes like Dr. Evil around the word reports there. Those reports would be issued in a steady stream over the ensuing weeks, and per MPT, the thrust of most of those reports was that MPT purportedly engages in illegal round-trip transactions by overpaying owners of hospital properties and leasing those properties back to the sellers, who then operate the hospitals and return the, quote, overpayments to MPT in the form of rent. The reports also accuse MPT executives of engaging in fraud and juicing their own compensation. And this is where I think they kind of crossed the line, and why MPT probably filed this lawsuit, because they're starting to use words that actually have legal ramifications against the management of MPT, accusing them of things like fraud or illegal round tripping, which that, has a very specific definition, I guess, and they do explain that later in the lawsuit, but I think this is why they are going after them for defamation. Meanwhile, on Twitter, using hashtag fraud and hashtag Ponzi scheme, Pairing has pumped Viceroy's false claims while urging investors to dump MPT stock, accusing MPT of involvement in hashtag corruption and, quote, scamming investors, and promising his tens of thousands of followers that MPT's, quote, employees will go to prison. So the rhetoric seems to just be getting more and more ridiculous and extreme as they go down. And by the way, we're not even halfway through this whole lawsuit. It's like 40-something pages total. So I don't know exactly when I'll stop this one. And in the next one, if there's parts that seem like they're boring or repetitive, I may just omit them and move on to the next interesting point. But I think the early parts, it's important just to give context. So I'll probably get to a couple more of the points in the lawsuit before wrapping up this part, and then we'll get the second part out before too long, and hopefully I'll have finished going through most of this thing before next earnings comes out. MPT goes on to say that these accusations are malicious fiction concocted to manipulate the market and drive profits from short selling. As outrageous as they are, defendants' falsehoods have influenced the market and caused serious harm to Medical Properties Trust. Since Viceroy began its attacks, MPT's stock price is down over 35%. A potential counterparty has pulled away from a commercial transaction, and MPT has had to increase physical security at its Birmingham headquarters. Several analysts who follow MPT have observed the impact that the short attack has had on the stock. Recently, a prominent REIT analysis firm observed that, quote, an investigative investment research firm focused on short selling, meaning Viceroy, had, quote, contributed to the sell-off in MPT's shares with a series of, quote, negative notes. So that's a mouthful. And this was filed in March of last year. That stock price decline is way bigger now. I think this is the part where I'll end it on, because it's quite the zinger. Sometimes charlatans spread their lies to no effect. That, unfortunately, is not the case here. MPT brings this action to stop defendants repeating their lies, to recover damages for the harm caused by those lies, and to compel defendants to disgorge the ill-gotten gains earned on the back of those lies. I appreciate how sassy they're being here, and in future parts, I may omit some of the boring jurisdictional stuff, some of the parts where it gets overly granular about the exact nature of certain transactions. I might just use a handful of those examples that they pull up in here. This was pretty comprehensive when read in its entirety, and of course, I'll link it so that you guys can actually read the thing yourselves if you so choose. But I hope you will continue to watch in future videos for my commentary. If you made it to the end, I want to offer you my thanks. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel for more videos. Make sure you like it for the algorithm. Consider becoming a member, joining on Discord, link in the description. Catch me every Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Catch Slow Kings Live, link in the description there. That's my other channel. Now, I want to encourage you also to check out the due diligence thread that I post the link to in the description and the link to the actual text of the lawsuit itself. This is very interesting stuff. Take it easy, everyone, and also follow me on Twitter. Link